In South Africa, well, TransUnion tracks the credit records of 23 million South African consumers. And it says, despite the tough economic times, credit delinquency rates in South Africa are generally declining. To discuss, we're joined in studio by Carmen Williams, Director of Research and Consulting for TransUnion South Africa. Carmen, welcome to you. So this sounds like good news. Are South Africans generally getting smarter, or is something else going on here?
Well, we definitely do see that, as you mentioned, despite the tough economic climate, and this is by the way of increased unemployment, rising fuel costs, despite all that, one would expect a deterioration in credit performance. However, we've seen largely the opposite. We've actually seen an improvement in delinquencies across most credit products. This is definitely good news. It means that consumers are actively managing the debt that they currently have, and it may well be that all the financial education that's been happening is definitely starting to pay off.
What is delinquency? Define that for us.
So we classify delinquency as an account or a balance that is 3 or more months in arrears. So that is what a serious delinquency would mean.
So is something fundamentally changing? You say maybe financial literacy. What about the laws? I don't know. Is it becoming harder for those who want to give you credit to do that?
For us, what we've seen in the data specifically, with this consistent decrease in delinquencies, what could be the fact is that consumers are really looking at keeping their credit standings in good health, to be able to access that credit again in future, because in difficult times it is important that consumers can rely on credit. It is a source of stability for struggling families, so that continued access is important, and to that end, consumers are looking after their credit relationships much better.
So we're just getting more mature, basically.
One would think so, yes, and it's definitely an indication in the data.
Yeah.
We've not only seen this in big products such as your home loans, but we've also seen it come through in credit cards and personal loans as well.
Again, could it be linked to the banks? I mean, are people scared of losing their homes if the banks have become harsher? Because you do say that people are servicing their home loans. That is quite a marked trend.
Absolutely. People are definitely paying off their home loans. They are also, over and above that, there's also been quite a bit of new home loan accounts that's been opened over the last year. Home loan originations went up by 2.2%, and that is indicative that there is definitely a demand. And over and above that, consumers are conducting these accounts fairly well by also specifically in home loans case, being the largest portfolio, currently sitting at 888 billion, it has the lowest delinquency rate of 3.8% and actually decreased by 10 basis points year over year.
Okay, so good news for the big banks, but then you say most credit products experience negative growth except clothing accounts. So
That's
people
right.
are still being risky with clothes.
Well, I wouldn't call it risky, but what I can see in the data is that the clothing account industry was the only one that grew substantially for new originations. They grew by 31.4%, which is quite large compared to all the other products.
Yeah.
But what is interesting is that this trend has been observed over the last few quarters, so it's not necessarily anything new.
Would you give any advice, because you know the interest rates on those sort of accounts, is that a bad idea?
Well, what we've seen in the data is that average balances for new accounts actually are quite low, much lower compared to existing accounts. So we've seen that for an existing account, clothing loan, the average balance is around 5,500, as opposed to a new account where it is 3,500. So what this means is that when consumers take up new clothing accounts, lenders are quite cautious about that and are granting smaller credit lines to be able to accommodate that.
And that's a good thing.
That is definitely a good thing, and it also helps contain the delinquencies.
Before you go, can you comment? I mean, inflation came out today and we're heading sort of up to that 6%. Well, we're far off, but 5.2 is higher than expectations. What does that mean for consumers when the price or the cost of living starts going up to the extent that we're seeing right now?
So with an increase in inflation, that definitely gives an indication that the price of daily goods will increase. We do understand that there's generally a 3 to 6 month lag for these prices to take effect. So one can expect that into the new year, the actual effect of this increase may only be felt. In the near future, not so much, and at this point in time, not too much of an impact on debt servicing.
And then there's pressure on people to take on more debt. Can you tell, I know a long time ago there was a concern about people living in debt just for their daily necessities. Can you tell those who are in trouble how much trouble they're in?
Well, from our data, we're unable to see that. But what we can see from a credit card perspective is that utilization rates, so how much of the balance a consumer utilization rates have decreased quite considerably as opposed to any other type of product. So what we can see there, that is absolutely a good sign. Consumers are aware that they need to keep their credit in good standing and are conducting their financial obligations accordingly.
All right, so thank you very much. So South Africans handling credit better, long may it last. That was Carmen Williams from Credit Bureau TransUnion. Let's look at the financial indicators now.